Thanks for staying with us. On my far right is Evan Sogara, the chairperson of the East African Society Rule of Law Committee. Professor Peter Kagwanja is the Chief Executive Officer of Africa Policy Institute and the Deputy Party Leader of the People's Liberation Movement. And therefore, why the language is about liberation for him. Ahmed Hashi, commentator on diplomacy and foreign affairs, and Professor Noah Midamba is a senior associate at Gloseps and a commentator on military and foreign policy. Thanks for your time, gentlemen, and much appreciated for your patience. Yes, Ahmed.
Ayub, I think that we're having the most serious discussion I've ever had on live television. In the 1960s, I believe, there was a prime minister in England called Harold Macmillan, who went to Johannesburg. Or was it,
yes.
The capital was then in Pretoria.
No, it's Johannesburg.
It was Johannesburg then. And he gave a speech. It was called The Winds of Change. This speech warned the white settler apartheid system in Africa that the black underclass was going to overthrow them by any means necessary. They either gave this independence or there was going to be a bloodbath. And the white community in Kenya, the white community in Rhodesia, then now Zimbabwe, the white community in Algeria, and in South Africa, these were the three strongest racist redneck societies in our continent, were shocked. They couldn't believe it, that the British mother, the representative of the Queen, the Prime Minister's Queen, had come to their parliament and said, "You're on your own." This is a turning point in Africa. Today we have another turning point. And that turning point is a generation of young people who have simply said no. Business as usual is going to end. You are not going to be corrupt. We are not going to accept the political leadership that we have in the continent. They will use any means. In the Sahel, they used the military. All the people who overthrew those governments were under 25. If even Captain Traoré, who is 35, was given the seat by the 25-year-olds because they just thought that he was their senior captain. That is why they was given that seat. This generation is the Second World War in the United States. They call the Americans the golden generation. Africa has this golden generation. What has happened in Malagash, or in Madagascar, is an improvement on Kenya. Because do you know what flags they had raised in the presidential palace? The Pan-African Congress flag, the African National Congress, the African Union flags. They were flags of the sentiment of the African people. Mr. Ramalov was the chairman of SADC. And for the first time in the history of our continent, a president was overthrown who was the chairman of the largest conglomeration of countries in Southern Africa. And today, Malagash is peaceful. So it is not true that we're going to mess our countries if the people in the system or in the government are going to cause trouble. It is the legitimate right of the people, and it's in the Constitution, it's not me, to express their right to be sovereign. Now, we don't want to overthrow the Constitution. I've been the first, and Ayub is my witness, that I've said, look, if we try to use this kind of violent process, we're going to mess our country. And I stand with my friend and colleague on the right to say that we are going to wait for an election in this country, because we want a peaceful transfer of power. And that is going to show the leaders who are going to come after President Ruto that this country is not going to tolerate the kind of nonsense that goes on in this country from day to day. Lastly, Abraham Lincoln, the great Democrat, said, you know, we do not want to subvert the Constitution. But we want to overthrow the people who subvert the Constitution. That's the most critical thing.
And Professor Midamba, as well this will apply to Professor Kagwanja and Evans. Looking at the region, there is an environment of strongmanship, the almighty presidencies that were created under Museveni, for instance. And that window of what the opposition now calls a lifetime presidency was opened in 2017 when they amended their constitution to allow Museveni to run for another term in 2021. and also in Kagame, where everything revolves around one individual. What then happens during transitions? Are we not again going to be reverting back to the crisis because of the individualization of power in the region? And also the Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania.
Very good question.
Ayub, we just, and I hope it's out, we just removed a 90-year-old man in West Africa. You know, he lives in France. He's not in the country. And he ran the country. He was absent most of the time.
You're talking about Gabon.
I'm talking about Gabon.
Yeah.
These young people that Ahmed Hassi is talking about will not allow that to happen. There is a generation that came at the beginning who were nationalists, like Jomo Kenyatta. Is authoritarian. When he says something, everybody listens. The generation that followed, sort of benign. They're not raising any issue. But these young people, this Gen Z that just began in Kenya, is running like a bonfire throughout Africa. They're single focus.
Yeah.
They're committed.
They're not joking.
And they're creating waves within the system. So the young people will not allow that. A single term limit. We want to go back to democracy, and we're going to make it work.
Prof, is that a cause for worry before we shift gears again, given powers that the constant, the Copernican constant effect of Museveni, Kagame, also Ethiopia, the system though different, and in Tanzania, the culturalization of the party in Tanzania. What does it portend for transitions?
Very good question.
I think the point is we are almost back to the one-party mentality, if not the system. What is preventing the one-party dictatorship of the Moi era, of the Nyerere era, of the Kaunda era, is essentially the new constitutions that were adopted. So, in a sense, multi-party system is embedded within the law, but the practice is that we are having one-party kind of dictatorships in practice. Now, what that means is that we need to begin reflecting on what exactly is happening. We used to talk about the third liberation, because the second liberation was basically the restoration of people's order, or people's democracy, for which we have heroes that we talk about. But the new democracy, the new democracy of the third liberation was seen much to be more economic, and that's what has put the Gen Z at the middle of it, because it's basically a reaction against the excesses in terms of the economy and how the system is trying to kind of impose the same, and corruption and hemorrhaging of resources. This is what it's all about. But we are beginning now to see the return back to the status quo ante, where we have now to start asserting political rights. Because it's not just about the economic deprivation, it's also a depredation of our democracy. The hope is that this is not something people are taking lying down, if you look at what is happening in the region. And my brother and I have talked about the regionalization of authoritarianism. There's concerns about that. But at the same time, there is also the regionalization of resistance. This is what Boniface Mwangi stands for. This is what Agatha stands for. This is what Bob and others who have been listed in Uganda are about. So that we are beginning to see resistance against repression across the boundaries, taking advantage or riding on the wave of regionalization of the East African community and beyond. And there's the same thing with Ethiopia, Sudan, and others. So again, that's the ray of hope I'm talking about, that it is beginning, we are beginning to see that regionalization. And that's why we are having this rendition. The analysis we are having here is a contribution to the same. The other time we said Tanzania is more loyal to the South than to the east. Why? Because dictatorship is more entrenched in some of the southern parts, if you get to think about it. Yet, resistance is also seen in the south, in Botswana, and in those countries. We're beginning to
all
see
the way
the success. That's what we are talking about Madagascar.
Yeah.
So from the wind brewing, to borrow his phrase, brewing from the south is sweeping through the east and is going to the west. That's it.
Yeah.
So there is an array of hope here.
Yeah, Ahmed, just hang on. Evans, coming to you. Many people have idolized Lee Kuan Yew, including our president, and Paul Kagame as well, and also many, including Xi Jinping, before he rose to power. But Lee lifted up Singapore with no natural resources and transformed a tiny, struggling island into one of the world's richest countries with the best education system. Talking about Jumuiya then, if this economic struggle then is to be responded to by the leadership in the region, how then are they failing so gross, given they have access to the longest coastline in Africa that Somalia has? It has the ability of the Kenyan educated populace, which is one of the best that Kenya has ever produced. You have the landmass that Tanzania can provide you, what Rwanda can offer you, and the agrarian stature of Uganda. How are they then failing in the transformation of the region? Appears to be very difficult, is it, to understand?
The failure for transformation in the region simply boils down to individual character, and you can see the leadership, particularly in my own country, Kenya, whereby Kenya has all the material conditions for takeoff, but due to myopic mindsets in leadership, endemic corruption. I mean, Hashi has been more critical of these semi-literate and literate fellas running all over in the name of being in government and lecturing me and you.
Yeah.
And doing absolutely nothing to capitalize on our strength geopolitically in the region. Kenya has been on the descent in terms of our diplomatic stature and our stamina in the region as a hitherto regional bloc leader. Now, we have to look at democratic conditions in the region also, and to go back to the question you had posed before. Look at it with the metropolitan forces and the influences they've had in the region. When America was at its peak and it was pushing democratization as an ingredient for cooperation with it, we had a lot of reform measures. We had the African Charter on Elections and Democracy. We had the overhaul of the constitutive charter of the AU, the African peer review mechanisms that were well steered by President Mbeki, the Lome Declaration on Unconstitutional Change of Government. We had a raft of declaratory instruments that were aimed at nurturing democracy within Africa. But you see now, the West and America facing an emerging China, a powerful China, has been forced to compromise on certain push. Now, our leaders, being the carnivores that they are, the predators that they are looking at it like nobody's wielding the big stick against us. So they see that as a carte blanche to do whatever they want. That's why you'll go kill protesters on the street, and due to the compromise environment that they read from up here, they will get away with it. Now, the Lee Kuan Yew argument that has been made, that Kenya will become Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew prioritized what we call material development at the expense of democracy. And the Singapore model has been touted by authoritarian regimes all over.
Very true.
Yeah, that this is the way to go. Let's prioritize material conditions at the expense of democracy, which is a fallacy. Because this material development is not antagonistic to the growth and progress of democracy.
Well said.
So when you say that we will create material conditions for growth, development, so to speak, and development is problematic, GDP and otherwise, how about the human development parameters? Freedom of speech, human rights, What do we do with this? So it's a fallacy, and it cannot be entertained.
Before I come to Prof,
I couldn't agree.
Yes, allow Prof. I'll come to you, Ahmed. Yes,
okay,
Prof.
Fine.
Yeah. You know, people, I met Lee Kuan Yew, and Lee Kuan Yew had a lot to do with my turning point of returning back to Kenya.
Excellent point.
Because we met for 2 hours, a group of us, a group of scholars from America. And he looked at me and he said, young man, what are you doing in America with all that knowledge you have? Return to your country and fix it. And so the issue is, Lee Kuan Yew was not an exceptional person, and he does not look at himself as an exceptional person. He said he's doing what God gave him opportunity to do, which is raise Singapore to the level that nobody expected. And then he does not follow the European model. He ruled, he's a businessman. Mm-hmm. And so that when business people cut their salary, he also cut his salary. He ruled the government like a business. And everybody had a role and responsibility in bringing Singapore where it is. It was the common thing, which also the same in South Korea, is the mindset. He said the mindset. We set our mind to be, he had actually 2 things that he said. Yeah, mm-hmm. One was he had opportunity to grab everything he can and be the richest man, mm-hmm. one of the richest men in the world. Or lift his people up together and they become one of the most powerful economically in the world. They can feed their people, they can school their people, they can do incredible development in medical thing. And that's, at the end, is what he did.
Yeah. Ahmed then, because as Prof describes him, he was incorruptible, clear-eyed, geostrategist, and to what many have described Mr. Lee as, before his death, and admired, blunt speaking. He paid his civil servants well, and he prioritized merit and education. He placed the best among Singaporeans in portfolios that were very critical in the advancement of that country.
I think,
is that the case in our country?
I think from the ideological point of view and from the material facts of history, that the most profound transformation of the Far East occurred during the period of the Cold War. And I think our president needs to understand history in order to speak about it. Lee Kuan Yew was a neo-conservative right-wing capitalist who was a darling of international capital. I mean, people just didn't wake up and put billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars into Singapore as an investment just because they thought that Singapore was a beautiful place. There is some ideological circuit or some bulwark that surrounded this, and that was the Cold War. And in that way, the international capital, under the supervision of the American state and the European states, decided to put their money into Singapore as a way, as a conduit for finance capital. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are the environment of what happened to Singapore. There is no such thing as Asian values that made the Asians work harder than Africans, think more clearly than Africans, have more leadership than Africans. This is an obfuscation of the political economy of that region. It is fundamentally political that there was a red China right next door to Singapore. Right next to North Korea was red China, and North Korea that was also red in the Soviet bloc. The American system of finance capital and the state decided that there were some places in which we would show that capital was going to uplift people and bring them to a zenith as a way of justifying their political economy. Yeah. That is a fact. Can I just, it's very important. Yeah. Now, we in Africa, why did we not take advantage of this? It's because we had people like Mobutu Sese Seko.
And Idi Amin.
We had people like Idi Amin. We had people like the one of Chad. We had the one, all these brutal dictators who were foolish enough not to assess the international situation and say, how is it that we're going to benefit here? And how are we going to lift our societies and transform them? Lee Kuan Yew, Chang Pak-hai, and all the other leaders in that area were the most opportunistic people, because if you remember, Lee Kuan Yew did not want to have a Singapore. It's very important. He wanted to be in Malaysia, a country called Malaysia.
That's correct.
The Prime Minister of the Malaysians told them, you are Chinese.
That's correct.
Go to your place. And the Sikhs and the Indians who are in Singapore. And the Malays said, this is a Malay country. It's going to be called Malaysia. Leave. And that is how Singapore came into power. So I think the president, who yesterday, and let me quote him so that, you know, it's very important. Yeah. He said, Kenya, raising Kenya to a first world country from a third world country will take us 30 years, just like Korea, Singapore, and China. You see, that is a invitation to the president staying in power for the next 30 years, because in a messianic moment, he believed that in 30 years, he will be the three people. He will be Lee Kuan Yew, he will be Ping, he will be all these people in one. And I just want to put it to you that Hannah Arendt, the great philosopher, said that, you know, when there's a distinction between reality and words, reality and words, that is where the authoritarian or the totalitarian mindset grows.
Okay. So that was before the painful divorce of Singapore from Malaysia in 1965 that we talked about.
Yes,
yes, please.
Professor Michael Chege,
brilliant guy,
one of the architects of the Vision 2030 and others, and Anyang Nyong'o. But more specifically with Michael Chege.
Actually, it's the two of them.
We sat down under Kibaki and did a scenario of this whole thing about democracy and development. And we found 4 scenarios, and I think he spoke to some of them. Scenario 1 is where you have dictatorship and prosperity. Dictatorship leads to prosperity. The second is where dictatorship leads to poverty, right? And the second set is where democracy as we know it leads to prosperity. And the fourth one is where democracy leads to poverty. So in both cases, democracy can bring about poverty, and dictatorship can bring prosperity. Now, so I am ready as a person to be under a dictatorship that brings prosperity to the people.
I am not.
Are you getting it? A dictatorship that brings prosperity to the people. Why? Because Amartya Sen, from a philosophical point of view, says that development is freedom. I cannot have development and be, being oppressed, because I'll wake up and make my choices of where I'm going to buy my food, where I'm going to buy my clothes, where I'll take my children to school, and where I'm going to seek medical care. So it is all about development. That's why in China, nobody is talking about President Xi Jinping as a dictator, because all his people are happy with what is happening. Okay? But here in Africa, back to Hashi, the problem was our dictatorship deepened poverty. That's it. And I think President Ruto should not quote Amartya Sen, because Amartya Sen was here when Kenya was more prosperous than Malaysia. When we were giving aid ourselves.
They took the plan from the University of Nairobi.
Not only that, they came here to benchmark on how to do public transport.
Yes, I'll come to you.
And so on. So the point here is we don't need 30 years.
Yes, we don't.
We need 2 years only to overtake Malaysia and Singapore, because we have what it takes to do that. 2 years. So if you want to justify dictatorship and the prolonging of dictatorship that leads to poverty by way of quoting Singapore, that is a historical. The historical reality is Kibaki came to power in 2002. And by 2004, we are among Africa's most prosperous countries. We rose as a country to become one of the very, very few agrarian economies that are not based on the minerals, resources, to enter the middle income. That's why we are exempted from the World Bank. So what is the point? It is all about how we are being governed.
Yeah.
And our governance is not a governance of the people.
Absolutely.
It is the governance of the few at the top.
Yeah.
The moment we have a people-centered governance,
Yes.
a people-centered development,
That's enough.
we will be more than Singapore.
Okay, so Prof. Jasangon, Evans, coming to you. Prof raises the fundamental question. Dictatorship, poverty, democracy, poverty. Ideally, that's the situation, is it, in the region at the moment?
Well, I want to depart slightly from my senior at the academy, Professor Kagwanja. Let's go back to China, 1978. Deng Xiaoping sees the problems that were associated with Mao. Absolute dictatorship, deprivation of material conditions of life. Deng Xiaoping realized that if we keep this country absolutely under the grip of the party, absolute dictatorship, and people don't have material conditions, you're going to have problems. So that's why you see in China, whereas the popular argument is that there is no democracy at all in China, that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
Because at lower levels, village levels, there is some semblance of democracy. That is from the Great Leap Forward vision of Deng Xiaoping, 1978. So it's been opened up at local level. Where it gets tight is at the apex.
At the apex, yeah.
Whereby some 70,000 or so Chinese Communist Party members call the shots.
The Politburo.
Yes, but look at what has happened in China from 78 till now. China has single-handedly given birth to 500 new cities that are more or less the same.
It's amazing.
Why has that happened in China? We go back to Deng Xiaoping again. The vision, the Great Leap Forward.
Yeah.
A plan, a vision that has been sustained. Professor spoke of the Vision 2030 by Mzee Kibaki. Why did we depart from the Vision 2030? That was a viable blueprint that was structured and had institutions to steer it. Why do we come in with things that don't make sense? What is the current vision for this administration? I don't have an idea what they are doing.
Yes, Prof.
Sir Winston Churchill described democracy as the worst form of government. But it doesn't matter what you do with it, because he said the alternative is worse. And so the issue is, let's not just spring up and talk about democracy. The issue is, what does it mean to the person at the grassroots level? If you take statistic and ask a question, how many people in Kenya make more than 100,000? You'll be amazed.
Be amazed.
And so you're talking about transforming the goods and services to the local people. You know, Paul Kagame is trying. He's considered dictator, and then what he did is wrong. But if you go to Kigali right now, as our friends have gone, things are functioning.
Yeah.
The street is clean, there is order, and people understand where he's going. And so it's the people who's staying with him. And therefore, what we need to understand is you cannot get there as president or doing anything and say, I'm the wisest man in the world. The country is run by the people that are responsible for this country. And these mushrooms, if they're not happy, the country cannot be happy. And so that is what has happened in China. China focused on its people at the bottom level. And so there are hundreds and hundreds of top scientists who are in America, Europe, Chinese, who are transferred back to China. And they're shaping the future of the country digitally, complete engineering, new engineers in China that the world has never seen. And so people are saying, why? Because there's pride at the grassroots level. So our leaders must understand that fundamental fact. But you cannot go for a perfect democracy because you will not find one.
Yeah, but both casing points, Ahmed, seem not to be the practice in the region, is it? whether democracy or dictatorship, but not leading to prosperity?
The Somali Republic between 1969 and 1979, let me say 1979, those 10 years, under General Mohammed Siad Barre, Allah yarhamah, witnessed a tremendous economic growth. The factories were working, the agriculture was working, the military was telling the society what to do. And there's no question, when there is an authoritarian system, the trains are going to run on time. I always like to live in a country where the trains run on time, but I have to pay for the trains. It should not be free. That is my philosophy about these things. And I think that it is very critical for us to understand that the most recent example of economic growth that we can get is from certain countries. But it is also very important that we chart our own experience and our own path so that we don't copy someone and then down the road we go and fail. But we need to benchmark to say that works. Can we borrow what this works? And if this doesn't work, can we not borrow what this doesn't work? I think it is very important for us to understand that in Africa, the dictatorship of the military, no matter how much I support Burkina Faso and the Sahel Union, because the exploitation of the Sahel by the French Republic was so outrageous that the young people in the military just saw no other choice. Because when they elected the leaders of the Sahel Union or Burkina Faso or Guinea, they became just puppets to the French Republic. And this is a concrete example, is that Ravalomanana, the president of Madagascar, was sent a military plane from France. He was given a French passport, and he was taken from there to another French colony in the Pacific, and then sent back to France. What does that tell you about that man's nationalist credentials? What does that tell you? It tells you that he was a puppet working for foreign interests in his country. He was not helping his country. So it is a major issue in our African countries, or whether or not there are political leaders who are elected through the ballot, who thereabout then go and work for the empire. And I think that we as Africans have every legitimate right to reject this kind of political economy.
Okay.
Lastly, I think that it is very, very crucial for us also to understand that we're not interested in burning our nations or creating chaos. We are not going to do that. But what we are not also going to allow is the threat that your country is going to burn if you don't follow me.
Okay. And Prof, then, given the world order, which seems to be undergoing a shift, the West no longer concerned about state of human rights, value systems. Trump, during the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit, told the Emirati head that they have lots of cash. He has made leadership about transactional. However, what then in democracy, liberalism and constitutionalism for Africa works out? How do we define what works for us without, as Ahmed said, copying from the West, which no longer has the moral authority to tell us, lecture Africans on how to govern ourselves?
Absolutely.
Let's first of all celebrate the rise of Trump.
Yeah.
It's good to celebrate something, because Trump's mean liberation for our minds. You know, the idea of decolonization of our mind, that democracy must come from the West. And that leads us not to question the democracy we are talking about. And I think that's what Prof was talking about when he said that democracy, and I think this is Jaramogi Odinga who said, is like a hedge. You trim it to your taste. And trimming it to your taste, who determines the taste? It's your people. So in this case, the globalization of populism and isolationism and these protectionist policies is very, very important for us in Africa, because we are going to have our homegrown resistance, our homegrown assertion of the democracy, the kind of democracy we want. I said, in Ruto's position myself, I would want to be a dictator. If I'm in his position, I would want to be a dictator. But I would buy my ticket to dictatorship in the right way. I would defeat the three enemies of our people. And the three enemies of our people is poverty. Get rid of poverty. 2, get rid of ignorance by giving us the best education, the best training, and the best skills that any population in the world can have. Give us that. And 3, get rid of diseases. Make it easy for us to be treated. Enable us to walk into the bank, Equity Bank, at our 100 years. And James Mwangi and the lot will not question why we want to take our own payable in 20 years. Because they have faith that in our medical system, like the Cuban medical system, we are capable of living 120 years. They believe in it. Now, if you achieve that, please exercise your dictatorship as much as you want over me, because you have conquered the enemies I would like to conquer. So whatever else you're going to tell me, I'll just listen to you without questioning, because I have no enemies. But the moment I have poverty as we have in Kenya today, people are unable even to take their kids to school. The people, our education system is into all purposes in shambles. Our kids at the university today are teaching themselves because we are on strike. For almost, is it 4 weeks? Over a month. And the capitation we talked about is not there. Look at our hospitals. It's a facade. It is true we are telling our people you can go to the hospital, you'll get this and that and that. But we know at the heart of because we are Christians, we know we are lying. It's not true. We are Christians. So we know we are lying. We are Muslims. So we know we are lying. Because we believe in morality. At that level, even the slightest of dictatorship cannot be tolerated. Even the slightest. But if you conquer the enemies of our people and get our get rid of our people from poverty, ignorance, disease, then somehow we can tolerate your tyranny. But not if we are being tyrannized by poverty, we are being tyrannized by disease, we are being tyrannized by ignorance, and now you add on top your personal tyranny. Then you add on top of it your personal tyranny. Then tyranny becomes a very bitter pill to swallow.
Ahmed, Evans, I'll come to you. What Prof points out, the itemized issues you want to respond on, but they seem not to be the priority areas, is it? For instance, small and medium enterprises were a cornerstone of the Better Plan by President William Ruto. But you see there was the Hustler Fund, now there's Nyota Fund. Ideally, this pushes industry and manufacturing on the side, is it? Then which was meant to create jobs, and then you have decent incomes, which you can tax.
First class question.
Okay. Second question is still, Evans, to you. How then are we so confident of copying models like Singapore when we are failing on such small projects of lifting the young people who are educated from the depths of despair?
Again, let us go back to that question I posed. Why did we depart from Vision 2030? That was an elaborate template that should have been followed through. What you see with, and I don't know who is advising the president, because what the president is trying to do is more or less old tried methods of economics, Keynesian economics.
IMF and World Bank.
Where you want to build roads, you want to build houses, and somehow think that this will jumpstart an economy. The Kenyan economy is several levels complex, and you cannot use the methods of the 60s to cure problems that are prevalent in 2025. That having been said, democracy. I still believe that democracy can work. We only need to find what variants of democracy are applicable to us in Africa. There's the late professor, Ghanaian professor, Professor G.B. Aiti. He's written a very good book, Indigenous Institutions of Africa. And he has gone to great lengths to show us that democracy worked and did work in Africa. And those leaders who did not respect the people and their will were destooled. And therefore, when you come into office and your objective becomes personal accumulation, you become conveyors for rent-seeking. People are accumulating as if there's no tomorrow. Is it Edward Clay who told us that they're gobbling everything and vomiting on our shoes? Yeah? It's stupid, because even if it is a cow, the story of the cow was brought in early. You have to feed this cow, you have to ensure that it is well treated. Yeah. It has to be given grass. But you continue milking, overtaxing your citizens. Where are these? How does a country survive like this? It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and the Parliamentary Budget Office said that the tax proposal since the government came to place in 2022 have not been, have not been yielding the what was required by the taxman, the Kenya Revenue Authority. Prof, coming to you, the point pointed out by Evans, do we also, to an extent, at the expense of imperialism, forget our history before the Berlin Conference and the scramble for the partition of Africa?
I think Evans is raising a very important point. The point is we cannot be like anybody else. We have to be, as Kenyans, as Africans, we have to see this thing the way we are.
Yes.
And the challenge we have is we have too many ideas, okay, and we are not waiting for those ideas to germinate. China focuses on ideas and push it to the tilt until it works. Let me give you an example. We have $10 billion we owe to China. And we know exactly where China is going with this. Why are we going back to China to borrow money when we can do it ourselves? Ethiopian built the Grand Renaissance Dam. They built it by Ethiopian money. Ethiopia defeated Italian at the Battle of Adwa. And so Ethiopia is looking inwards to build the country. And there is alternative to China. And alternative one is Japan. Japan is promoting growth and prioritizing sustainability, okay, while they work with you. Another alternative, UAE money. They have a lot of money. They're looking for regional partnership where they work with us, not in exploitative way, but reasonable understanding. We have another one, Europeans, that look at human rights conditions, promote transparency. Why are we not going to those people so that we have multiple choices, so we are not hung like right now Angola, 51 billion they owe to China. How can you develop?
Yep.
So long as the little person in the village is angry, the country cannot move further.
Yes, Ahmed, your hand was up.
The Ghana is leading us in thinking, in philosophy. The distinguished Professor Emeritus, my teacher, Ato Sechi Otu, has written, although I don't agree with much of his economic thinking, I am on the right on that issue, and he's still on the left, has brought up a book and is written, it's called Partisan Universalism. And it questions the very idea of this universalism. This idea that what works in the world is good for us. I don't think there's any universalism. There's some sharing of our universalism. There are certain human rights that we share with Norway, for an example, that might not share with me. There are certain human rights that they don't share with me, or how we see those values. So I think that it is very crucial for us to be authentic. It is very crucial for us to be indigenous. It is very important for us to chart a path that is ours. But that does not mean that we are not going to accept universalism. But we have to be partisan about it. We have to be about us, first of all, and accept that there are certain things in the world that are there. For an example, today, English is the lingua franca of capital. Correct? We're speaking it.
Yes.
It is an expression of the hegemony that is today in the world. Correct? Therefore, I put it to you, Ayub, that it is very important for us to engage the president in debate about these things, because I don't think the president has a monopoly on the truth. And as experts in our fields, I think one of the things that is failing our president is because he has a caliber of cadres with him that absolutely are not independent or partisan universalists who can say, this is our view, Mr. President, and these are the options, okay? You just don't want to put a Mr. Ndi, who is a right-wing economist, and Mr. Mohammed Hassan, who are, monetary economists on the right, and you don't have those ones on the center, and you don't have those ones on the left, so that you can cook a possible explanation to our economy. And Mr. Kibaki understood economics. I mean, he studied under Keynes at the London School of Economics. So he understood the economy. What we are urging in this country is a very simple thing, is we want pragmatism, and we want practical things. We want to put dinner at the table of our people. We want to build good schools, good hospitals, in whatever theory informs that. Whatever theory informs that development is good for us. Yes. Deng Xiaoping said, I don't care if the cat is black, blue, or green, or whatever color it is. Can it catch the mouse?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. No, I like the debate myself. I like this debate, and I'm sure our President and others are listening. We are not debating here as black cats or white cats.
White cats, yeah.
What we want here is the rat is on the table. We catch the mouse.
Because we catch the mouse.
That's what we want, because some of us have gone to some of the best universities in the West, right? Paid for by the dollar of the West or the pound of the West. And therefore, we are not newcomers to the world, and we are not newcomers to Kenya because we were born here. So when we speak and say, we are Africans, so when we talk about democracy, we are not talking about Western democracy because we know who we are.
We don't.
We are a people who go for consensus.
Yes.
And I've said on this table, we need to rethink this constitution a little bit to align it with who we are. The Chinese, and I visit them a lot, think about harmony. It doesn't matter whether you are in green or in red. The issue is that you must work in tandem. That's why in their military parade, they would want to see that seamlessness of the soldiers.
Yeah.
The neatness. Harmony. Yes, and the neatness, the harmony. That's who the Chinese are, harmony. For the West, they believe, this is the dialectic, that conflict is the motor of development. If there's no conflict, there's no movement. That's why they will have the rubber and the tire and the rough road so that they can move. The Chinese have moved. It is magnetic, greening through the Rhine. That's why they are able to cruise on the ground 600 kilometers per hour. On conflict, you cannot go 600 kilometers per hour. The tire will be torn. Now, the electric train, based on the principle of harmony with the magnetic force, is able to cruise 600 kilometers per hour on the ground without wheels. It's the thinking. For us in Africa, we think about absolute consensus. Nyerere told us, we sit under a tree, I think acacia, talk and talk and talk until we agree.
We agree.
And that's what they are talking about the West. If you can't agree with us, you must swallow the calabash. That's the language they use in the West, that you commit suicide because you're not with us. Swallow the calabash and leave us alone. So absolute consensus is our way of doing things. But what joins all these thinking in the world, different as they are from Asia to Africa and the West? The concept of development, putting food on our table, and so on. So what made the Chinese great? By the way, by 1980, as of February 1980, we were born and had gone to school. China was the poorest country, one of the poorest countries in the world.
Yes.
In Africa, it was third from the bottom.
Yes.
The poorest country that time was Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, and Uganda at Amin. Those were the only countries that were poorer than China on the continent. By 1980,
per capita.
When Dan Xiaoping is now talking about the Great Leap, and eventually about the opening up and reform policy. 40 years later, we are here. What made the difference? Because Deng Xiaoping and his successors knew, yes, we are Chinese with a Chinese socialist with a Chinese characteristic. But somebody, the Italian scholar, Giovanni Arrighi, wrote one of the most influential books of our time, which is called Adam Smith in Beijing. Read that book, Adam Smith in Beijing. So he managed to transform his society in a way that went now beyond Lee Kuan Yew. beyond Lee Kuan Yew, because he merged two forces, capitalism and the Chinese identity.
Yes.
So what we want in this country is what to make our people prosperous and our Kenyan identity. Kenyan identity is not about some Buddhists moving around in the streets, pushing us around. It's about listening to us. That's it. But give us superior thoughts and we'll follow you. So I have no issues with the democracy or dictatorship. Yeah. I only have issues with our people being able to put food on their table, our people being able to have roof over their top houses, and our people being able to take their kids to school. Yeah. That's what that matters.
And their food secure.
Then their food security.
Yeah, before I come to Ahmed, Evans, then that great leap, how can it happen in terms of it being practical in our country, in our region, in that essence? We have the natural resources. Lee Kuan Yew didn't. And even the Chinese leadership at the time had idealized him. Yes. China today is the number one exporter of electric cars, not talking about even their trade volumes with America and Europe. So how will this happen then beyond the political rhetoric and copying the Asian giants, ideally to the practical things of what works for us Kenyans and what's required from the leadership? And is that understanding there?
Well, number one, the people have to be at the center of it. And you have to understand, as Professor has been consistently saying, what are the material conditions that is due to the people. The people are hungry. The people don't have access to Medicare, housing, and all material conditions of life are absent. You will have restlessness on the street. Number two, we need ideologues in office. I mean, you look at the consistent pattern in Lee Kuan Yew, Deng Xiaoping, all these people were ideologues. They had clarity of mind. This is what we want. As we constantly say that a mind that is not ideological is indisciplined, because you will be running all over. I hear some of our leaders speak. Today you are touting capitalist credentials. Tomorrow you are a Pan-African. Tomorrow you are acting like a pseudo-dictator. Who are you? You are a mongrel of an animal. We can't tell who you are. For heaven's sake, be disciplined. Let's know your ideology, your thinking, and be disciplined. Three, corruption. We'll not tire reminding that leaders that when you go into public office, you're not there for personal accumulation, rent-seeking. The benefits of the state must trickle to the citizens. You go in there and think that yours is to ride in the big cars and wear the flashy watches and buy all these material opulent things that they show to us. No, there's a reason why everyone having been satisfied around, you will carry the country, the state with you. Yeah. That must be not forgotten.
Yes, Ahmed, last comment? Briefly, yeah, last comment. Before, let me come to Prof, then come to you. Yes, Prof. Your hand was up before I sample the feedback.
I just want to remind our audience and ourselves that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, professionalism, and mutual respect for each other. If you want to define democracy, that is my democracy.
Since my last comments, we all know what's going on in the world and in Gaza, and we're in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we know what the Palestinian people have gone through. And the great Macaulay, the English poet from India, said that brave Horatius, the captain of the gate, said, to every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late. And how can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and from the temples of his gods? May the Palestinian people become free.
So let's sample the feedback. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Frank Orinde says democracy in Africa is fading fast. Leaders win through the ballot, but govern through fear and manipulation. When power becomes the prize, democracy loses its meaning. Bob Otieno Wino says democracy is in turmoil more so in the East African community because of authoritarianism leadership and ruling through status quo. Babu Michael says, I feel it's gross violation of international law, personal and even human rights for the East African community member states to abduct and detain activists Oyo and Bob. Why is the so-called Jumia silent about this too? What's happening? No justice at all, no justice. MC_Rumor says a wind of change is blowing in Africa. No amount of abductions or brutality can stop an idea whose time has come. Young people are not going to tolerate bad governance, corruption and impunity anymore. It's time for the likes of Museveni to go.
True.
Frank says again, Africa's Gen Z isn't buying the democracy lie anymore. They have seen elections rigged, voices silenced and promises broken. A new generation is demanding honesty, justice and accountability and not slogans or sloganeering. The real revolution is digital, bold and unstoppable. Kim_Miriti says democracy cannot thrive easily in poor economies. As Dambiza Moyo points out, the debt-burdened Africa has had its priorities upside down. Economic growth is the prerequisite for a democratic turnaround, not the other way around. Much appreciated, gentlemen.
What an amazing show, Ayub.
So we end the class here.
I think we're educating nearly 27 million people in this region and beyond. And I just want to say thank you for the courage it takes to put on a program like this. Asante sana, Ayub.
Yeah, and one of senior citizens in this country says this is my favorite panel in studio today, educating us on this very important matter.
Wonderful. That's great.
I don't want to mention her by name. Yes, Prof.
Yeah, we got it.
We got it.
Asante.
And you're the facilitator.
Yes. Asante.
You're the right person.
You've raised the tempo.
They've raised the tempo of the debate in this country.
Thank you so much. So next week we come and talk about now other major issues in the world and in Africa.
Asante.
Appreciated. Evans, thank you.
Thank you,
Professor Kagwanja. Ahmed, thank you. And Prof, thank you. Thanks to you too. Up next is Health and Lifestyle with Safin Achieng Oma. And I will see you tonight on the bench at 9 p.m. Till then, good morning. Professor.